This is Mike, and welcome to episode number 406 of the Ecomcrew podcast. And hello from Las Vegas, Nevada. So, e-commerce, specifically FBA aggregators, have really been blowing up over the past couple of years, which is why we decided to just do a series of podcasts with some of the biggest names in the aggregator space. I want to thank Jake of Wolpert from Acquco for coming on and talking to us today. Hopefully, we'll have other aggregators on in the future. These guys have already amassed revenue north of $200 million, so they are no small guys on the block, and I think it's going to be interesting talking to several of them. We'll link to the ones we've already done previously in the show notes. But I think the idea here is to just kind of get a feel for why these aggregators are in the space, what they're looking for. Every one of them's got like a little bit of a different approach. I think it's fun to kind of hear from that. And this one's no different. So again, Jake, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode with Acquco right after this break. Hey, Jake, welcome to the Ecomcrew podcast.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. We're working on putting together a series of talking to a bunch of different aggregators in the space, and appreciate you coming on and delving into the shark end of the pool over here. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and things to want to talk about. But the main reason we were just chatting a little bit before hitting the record button. The main reason I wanted to have you come on, I just think that after you record 400 episodes, it gets more and more difficult to find new things to talk about. And luckily for me, between Amazon just constantly changing their policies and Facebook changing their policies, and then out of the blue now this aggregator thing, there seems to always be something new to talk about, and this seems to be the hot trend of the day.
Absolutely, yeah. It feels like this space is only a couple years old. Although if you've been in it for more than a year, it's like feels like 10 years, right?
It seems that way, and we have this blog post on our site. We're close to tracking 100 aggregators now, and I think that 2 years ago, just kind of thinking back, this wasn't even on the radar, and so. Right. I guess to start off, what makes you think that things have accelerated so quickly?
I think it's exciting. I think, $7 billion, something like that's been pumped in. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think that, people see, starting at zero on Amazon, and next thing you could be $1 million, you could be a $2 million seller. So it's exciting. I think it's different from outside businesses. Like you and I could never scale pizza restaurant to $5 million in 6 months. So I think that's part of it. And then I think, Amazon just continues to take more and more of the total e-commerce sales. And so people have just gravitated towards Amazon.
And, when I think about businesses or companies that are, let's say selling on Amazon, we're all like competing to try to be the one that ranks number one for a particular keyword and get the most sales of a product. I think about the aggregator space very differently. I mean, it seems like it's there's lots of people with a whole bunch of money that have kind of realized that in terms of other investments they can be making, this is a good investment. But once you make the acquisition, you're not really necessarily competing against other aggregators, so it's a different space from that perspective, from the financial end. But the competition in terms of why should I sell to one aggregator versus the other has gotten pretty intense. I've seen interesting things in forums about like getting a free car if you sign with me, or shares or something in a company, or just all kinds of crazy things. What do you guys kind of perceive as your unique selling proposition on the buy-in?
Yeah, and in fact, the Tesla program you might have seen, that's the car that we were given away for referrals.
Oh, that's you guys? Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
You might have seen me walking around at the Prosper show. We got covered by some outlets, Business Insider, CNBC. So a lot of buzz. In fact, we're getting pretty close to giving away a couple Teslas for the
nice
program. So it's nice exposure for us. But yeah, I mean, I think it is hard to differentiate yourselves in the space. I think for us, there are internal and external differentiators. Internally, we think of ourselves as more of an operator than an aggregator. I think if you think of yourself as an aggregator, the goal is to just acquire a bunch of companies.
Right.
But there's a long-term play here. You have to scale them, and that's where the real challenge starts. We think of ourselves as operators because our CEO and co-founder Ronick actually worked at Amazon. He was part of the emerging technologies team. So a lot of the features that you see on Amazon, his team was responsible for. And then after Amazon, because I think it's not enough just to have worked at Amazon, right? It's good, right? But it's not enough. I think after where he worked at Amazon, him and Wiley, our other co-founder, launched and grew, scaled and exited multiple FBA brands. They've consulted with large brands on and off Amazon. I think that's important because when we go to, talk with sellers about an acquisition, they want to know that we've been there. They want to know that we have their best interest in mind. We've gone through the challenges they've gone through. And then on the other side, when you talk about the earnout potential and the profit participation, you really want to bet on the company with the most Amazon experience. Yeah. I think that is where we separate ourselves from some of the other companies in the space.
And it does seem like, I at this point, I know dozens and dozens of people who have made deals with various aggregators, and it seems like there's almost always some sort of earnout component to it.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is that just the aggregators are smart? They're good financial people. They come from that background where they realize that they can put up a third less capital, has some less risk. They're making sure that maybe it's that the seller isn't trying to pull the wool over their eyes as much. If you're kind of along for the ride, then maybe there's less stuff you'll throw under the rug. Or is there other things that I'm not mentioning, or is it those things and more?
No, I think you nailed it. The other thing is, I think we want to go into a partnership in that, we want potentially them to be invested, maybe for 6 months they're consulting with us. I mean, they have the expertise. It's their brand.
Yeah.
If we can grow it together, because personally how hard it is to grow a brand on Amazon, and we're not, we don't have an ego to think that we know everything. And so if we can share their expertise going forward, we certainly will share in the profits.
Yeah, and for me, someone who just bought a new business, did something similar to what you guys, we're on a much smaller scale. We bought one business. We're not looking to. Right. I'm at a point in my life where I love what you guys are doing. I think that it's exciting. I absolutely find it fascinating, but don't want to be on that roller coaster. 10 years ago, I would have been absolutely trying to push this and do this myself. But taking over one brand has been like overwhelming. And I think the thing that you really realize is that you're talking about the operator side. We can all be great operators. Like we all know how to create listings and make sure that there's inventory in stock and that you have great imagery and video on there and you're doing good PPC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that gets to be overwhelming is taking over these brands and understanding the actual products themselves. And that's kind of overwhelming. And doing that over hundreds of brands is kind of crazy. So I guess having someone around for 6 months to help make that learning curve flatten out a little bit over a 6 month period versus a 6 day period, can be a huge help, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's based on what the seller wants. Sometimes they want to retire and go hang out on the beach, but we tailor all of the deals to the brand owner. We can't talk about customizing opportunities if we don't allow the Amazon brand owner to choose how they want to be involved. Yeah. Sometimes they want a clean exit. Sometimes they're involved for a month, or once a month. But we really let them decide, and that starts before the acquisition even happens. What do they see? Where do they see the brand in 2 to 3 years? Where do they see the opportunity? And you'd be surprised, how much information you get just by being open and honest with them.
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of brand owners, someone like myself, the reason that we started selling assets wasn't that I thought that we had a bad brand or that the future wasn't bright. It just, you start worrying about the risk component, overlaying a risk component, maybe a 3%, 5% of like some doomsday scenario over top of one brand, can be pretty intense for someone like myself who had started from zero and built up multi-million-dollar business and have a small chance of things going to poop. It's scary, but if you have 100 brands and each one's only got a 3% chance, then you guys are in a much better position from a risk standpoint.
Right. That's right. And I also think that, because I speak with about 200 sellers a month, and a lot of times what they've done to get to, let's say, a $5 million mark are not the same things that they would do from 5 to 10 or 15 million, right? There's
Yeah.
different infrastructure they have to put in place. I find that a lot of times they're working in the business more than on the business. And what they're really best at is finding products, branding them, and launching them. And they're not doing any of those things anymore.
Right.
And it's like, they don't enjoy it as much. And, and then there are just, areas of the business that, they just don't have experience in. And a lot of times they exit because they could just go back to what they're really good at. And there's a better chance of them getting a business from 0 to 5 than maybe, going past 10 million. And, at the end of the day, you could sell 2 businesses, for 5 million.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can definitely relate to this because, and it definitely makes me jealous or admire a lot of entrepreneurs. I think of someone like a Bill Gates or someone like maybe Steve Jobs that started a company with 2 people. Him and a partner, or him and one or 2 other partners, depending on which business we're talking about specifically. And they get to that $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, $1 billion, $10 billion. It's still the same CEO. It blows me away because, I haven't been through any of the $20 million plus challenges, let's say, because that's about the biggest we ever got a company. But man, there's a huge difference between 100,000 and a million, and then 5 million, 10 million, as you're saying. And as an entrepreneur, typically you don't get to go to school for this beforehand. You just you're never. It's just and it's hard. It's definitely, and like you said, you're good. You're good at a certain set of things. It's typically a thing that you don't want to give up. It's the hardest thing to give up.
Sure.
So you're stuck between trying to run this business and then also trying to be the one that designs products or does the things that was really the secret sauce, and it binds a lot of companies up. And so I have mad respect for people who are able to do that, and that's another, I think, skill in its own. Another thing where some of that's luck or just being able to kind of push through those barriers. But a lot of times, like you said, you can sell off one $5 million company and go do it again. It's like, for me, it's the early days when I'm in the solopreneur phase seem to be the easiest, when you have to start working with a bunch of other people, and there's a lot of other factors that just makes it more difficult.
Exactly. You know the challenges, right? You've overcome them. And the other thing is, you get to a certain point where now you're doing all the things, like you're on the phone with Amazon trying to get your listing, it's suspended, right? And you're good at that, but what are you not doing right now? Right. Or you're managing people and you're like, I don't want to manage people. I just want to be, me and my other business partner. I trust them, and I know us together we can scale businesses. And I think that's a point that a lot of the Amazon sellers get to, and that's why they decide to exit.
My favorite part of being a little bit bigger is I have someone that does that Amazon nonsense. I never deal with Amazon suspensions, or very rarely, I should say. Every now and then the last one I dealt with is because they called me directly. Amazon called me, which kind of freaked me out, which never happens. Usually it's through their platform, and my team takes care of it. And I tell them, I don't even want to know about it. Just you're the one that has to deal with making those phone calls and dealing with those emails. So it's so frustrating. It's just so frustrating.
Imagine if Amazon's calling you. It's never a good thing.
Never good.
Say, hey, you just made it into the top 1%. This is Jeff Bezos calling you directly, congratulating you.
Yeah, none of that. It was you're selling something that's prohibited, and you have to recall it out of our warehouses immediately, otherwise we're going to suspend your entire account.
Was it the pesticides?
It was a precursor explosive product. It wasn't pesticide. We were in the pesticide mess too, but this was an ammonium nitrate issue, same type of thing. And that was a fun, interesting time. And we got it all fixed eventually. But they called me and kind of freaked me out because their support's so awful that when you actually get someone calling you, it was just like, holy crap, this must really be bad.
Exactly. I got it. Oh man, it's a challenge for sure, but luckily you got through it. Got through
it. Cool. So taking a step back, I'm just curious. How did you specifically get into this? Was this, you saw an ad in the paper, or do you know the owner, or did you have a background in finance? I'm just curious how you personally got involved in this space.
Yeah, I feel like the way people get into Amazon space is 50%, they've done e-commerce, and the other 50% is something totally random, right? And that's how it is for me, right? I did stand-up comedy for a little.
Nice!
Sold real estate. I helped grow a Chief Executive Network, which is a peer networking group for manufacturing presidents and CEOs. nothing to do with Amazon. I went to business school. I got my MBA at Rutgers. So, I did some brand management, consulting. And then I got into FeedVisor, which was at the time repricing software for resellers. This was a little bit before the advertising technology came on. And then we started to swim upstream. This was a time where brands were really trying to figure out Amazon. Their products were being resold. They wanted to take control. So we did a lot of brand management for some decent sized brands. I would say mid-size companies like Aldo and Revlon. And FeedVisor eventually sold advertising tech. So I really started to learn, the technology side, right? All the software side, all the competitors. I learned how to sell on Amazon because I was speaking with so many sellers.
Right.
And then, I helped grow that team on the sales side. And then I moved over to Blue Whale Media, which was an Amazon advertising agency. But our parent company, Trevco, is actually a top 150 seller on Amazon. So I think, all these experiences, I just learned all the aspects. I won't say their name, but one of the larger aggregators in our space, I met when they were like a $10 million company. And they were kind of telling me, they said, we're going to be a $100 million company. And I was like, that's great. Like, so ambitious. This is years ago, though.
Right.
So I've been following them. I've been following the space. And then, I got connected to the founding team at Acquco 5 months ago. And more than anything, I really bought into them. And so, wanted to be part of it. And ended up working perfectly because they wanted to build out sales team and sales process.
Very cool. So speaking of the sales team and sales process, walk me through what it is you guys are looking for. Like, obviously, as I've talked to some aggregators, let me kind of preface this a little bit. Like, I talked to some aggregators, it seems like some are looking for different characteristics or qualities than others, and trying to build things that kind of like all work together in terms of maybe like they're food brands or they have some type of consumability, or there's been some interesting things I've seen. Certainly they're looking for solid businesses with good financials and stuff like that. That seems to be pretty constant. But is there any things that kind of set you guys apart for the types of businesses you're looking for?
Well, we're relatively category agnostic. I would say, just like almost every other aggregator, we don't want cell phone cases or fidget spinners or, heavily seasonal products. I think everybody would say that. I don't think anybody's out there trying to buy, DVD players, stuff like that. But, mostly category agnostic. I would say if it's a strong brand, we're interested. Generally, they're doing, they have about $1 million in LTM EBITDA. And then, from there, they can scale larger. We're interested. But I think we scrutinize each category differently. So instead of saying like we're totally not interested in a category, we look for different things. As an example, right? Apparel, really high returns sometimes. So it's not a no, but we want to look at it and say, kind of look at the brand individually. And I think, you'll hear me say discipline probably a lot on the calls. I think we're not just trying to acquire every brand because Thrasio or Perch are trying to buy it, right? If it doesn't fit into our portfolio, we can pass.
Gotcha. So you mentioned cell phone cases specifically. Why no cell phone cases?
Anything where like a new generation every year is tough for us. Anything like, every year there's something new. It's
the new model.
Not the best for us. You got to launch it. It just adds multiple layers to the strategy.
It seems like a nightmare business, but it also seems like you maybe get to a certain point where you legitimately have a brand and people, every third generation when they upgrade their phone or whatever it is, actually go back and buy the same one. But that's hard to find. There's only a few brands I can think of in that space that actually have achieved that. So
right. When I was at FeedVisor, I closed a huge $100 million. They were selling across a couple of brands, but $100 million company on Amazon, and we were selling them advertising, and they had a 435% ACost. And when I told them that, they were like, "Oh, I thought it would have been higher." And I was like, "Oh, 400% ACOS. Like how are but they're making $100 million and they're making money. I think on repeat purchases and products, but it was I was shocked. I'd never seen something that high. But I think when I think about acquiring a company like that, that would be a hard no.
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely agree with that. The other thing you mentioned was the $100 million EBITDA over the trailing 12 months.
1 million. Sorry,
1 million. I just said 100 million. Sorry, I was thinking and talking at the same time. Never a good thing.
Yeah.
$1 million EBITDA over the trailing 12 months. Why that number? I mean, is it if it's a $500,000 or 100,000? I mean, I'll answer the question. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. I do. This seems like a lot, but what I've discovered is that it's basically like the same amount of work, no matter what. If you're taking over 100,000, a million, 5 million, you still got to put the same amount of effort into like absorbing it and learning it and taking it over.
Sure.
And I guess it means it's just not worth the size that you are and the staff that you have. Is that kind of just like the minimum to make it worth your while?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think we will look at a brand if we see huge potential that's 800,000 EBITDA, 750,000. I think the idea though is we want a track record of growth, and usually a brand that's above $1 million has grown for a couple of years, and you can say that they didn't just ride the COVID when get to a certain point, and then it's just generally the brands that are that size have gotten there for a reason, right? They have stuff in place. They might have review mode as well. And that kind of just fits in perfectly to the way we've been targeting companies.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Hey guys, I wanted to pause the podcast for just a minute and remind you that we're doing a series of video podcasts, including this episode, on YouTube. So if you go over to YouTube and search for the Ecomcrew podcast, we have a channel just for this over on YouTube. We'd love to have you follow us over there, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be doing some of these podcasts on video format, seeing if there's interest in it. We've had a lot of people say they'd love to see us do podcasts. And so for the ones that we can do on video, again, like this one, we'll have this up on YouTube. I think it's a more enjoyable way to watch it. It's almost like a mini TV show, something you can have on in the background on your desktop, a little bit more interactive than just the podcast. But if you're just into iTunes or however else you get your podcast, that's good too. But if you do want to watch on YouTube, head over there. Again, search for the Ecomcrew podcast channel on YouTube. Now back to the show. Speaking of COVID, man, what a crazy, challenging time this has been. It's like what a decade the last year has been, kind of thing. How are you guys evaluating businesses? I mean, I look at our own businesses right now, and we were looking to sell one of ours. Hopefully, this year. It's not going to happen now because COVID kind of wrecked our financials. For that business in a bad way. We look at another business we just bought. It's been going great. I mean, do you feel like now that we're 18 months in this, you've been able to come up with some type of formula or risk overlay or some type of way to evaluate, like, this is up because of COVID or this is down because of COVID, and we're going to make an offer of XYZ and feel like we're not overextending ourselves in some way based on data that is almost like you just got to throw it away?
Yeah. Excellent question. It depends on what the expectations are for the seller, right? Because sometimes they're selling masks or something that is clearly a COVID product, right? When they're not interested. Other times they're selling like gym equipment, home gym equipment, like exercise bands, and they want an outrageous number. Yeah. Right? Okay, it's probably not a fit, but if we feel like they're being realistic, and I do think that people, and I listened to one of your earlier podcasts. I think it was 364 maybe. All right, you and Dave talked about aggregators. I think gym equipment may continue to grow because people figured I don't need to go to the gym anymore. I could do it at home. For a product like that, we see it continuing to grow in some categories, and so we evaluate it just like any other product. And I don't have to bring off all the categories, but sometimes if we see it just continuing to grow, even after the COVID tailwind, we can evaluate those businesses as they were normal products.
What do you do on the other side of the coin? What if it's a travel related business? Someone that sold, let's say, those compression sacks or something, and just had a great business that's been wrecked. Now they're looking to sell. What happens on that other end of the coin?
Yeah, we can get creative on, usually we base, multiples on LTM, EBITDA. There are times though where, they can show us, that they've, what their sales were 2 or 3 years ago. And again, it's based on what they feel most comfortable with. There are a lot of times where we talk to sellers and we both decide, let's wait 6 months. Let's let you, we want them to make as much money as possible. So
right.
Let's wait 6 months to revisit. I have tons of notes in my calendar to reach back out to people, when their businesses, can show a 8-month growth, 7-month growth. But I think we can get creative with them. Like I said, every deal is tailored to what they're looking for and what really makes sense for our business.
Gotcha. So running through your guys' like standard playbook, and again, one thing you've made very clear, and I also want to make clear here, is that it sounds like you guys, I think, I'm sure a lot of the aggregators as well, but you've made it very clear in that, you kind of meld to what's necessary to the deal. Like maybe someone doesn't want to put 6 months in post sale, or maybe they want less of an earn out, or whatever it might be. Maybe they have a business that was struggling for some reason. They're trying to, but if you were to look at your standard one sheet outline of what a deal would look like, what could someone expect to kind of see as some basic terms coming to you guys?
Yeah, lately we've seen an upfront payment, and then most sellers that we work with want to earn out potential, whether that's a stability clause or that's based on the profit participation as we grow. They want that they can make the most money on their earn out. And usually when we're talking to a seller, the other companies that we're talking to can operate businesses as well, and so they usually choose that option with the earn out potential. And then it's just who am I betting on to grow my business? But again, usually we ask them right off the bat, what do you want? We also give them 2 options. Here's what you could get if you took an upfront payment, and then here's where you could have if you took the earn out potential. I think sellers like that. I think it's their business. They should choose how to exit.
So let's say it's that $1 million EBITDA business. I mean, are you comfortable sharing what like the 2 options would be if I were Mike Jack to sell my $1 million EBITDA business? What would you present to me?
Yeah, well, I mean, we number one, we'd show you exactly how we're going to grow your business. I think that's important as well. I'm not totally comfortable giving you numbers. I think, one thing that separates Acquco is that we're not just going to throw out a number to get you excited, get you into an exclusive period, and then, hammer you down with, hey, we found this, and then, either the deal falls apart or, you agreed way less. In fact, a lot of times we acquire a business, we lost them the first time, right? They went with this shiny number and they came back. 99% of the times that we close, it are the terms that we agreed to on the LOI. And I think that's really important that we're transparent all the way through.
And for people that are out there listening that haven't been through this process before, I'm just kind of reading between the lines here because I've lived this, unfortunately. You're 20 years in business, you just kind of see everything, but even specifically in the e-commerce space, I mean, a lot of the brokers will sign up people based on whoever can get advertise what they're going to put the highest number on the business in terms of sale. So like, we can get 4.5x for your business. We're going to list it for 4.5 million. We think it doesn't sell for that, and then they got to lower it, but they're already under contract and kind of got people sucked in. I see that happen a lot. That's one of the things I really appreciate about Quiet Light. They are way more realistic in the numbers that they typically will tell you that businesses are actually selling for, and that they try to sell or list them in that range instead of playing games of trying to give you false hope and expectations. And for you as the business owner, this is going to be one of the most emotional things you're going to go through, right? This is your baby, the thing that you created. It's a life-changing amount of money. For the person on the other side, it's going to be different. It's a business transaction. The people that are less scrupulous or whatever will come up with all kinds of crap to needle you down and wear you out. And you're so close to the finish line. You're like, oh, what's another 50K? What's another 100K? and next thing you know, you're right back to where you started. And the fact that you guys don't do that, I really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Amazon is a huge space, but it's really a small world. People talk, and the last thing we want is a reputation of, beating people down. The other thing is sometimes people go and they sell a business and they start another business. So we want to maintain that relationship. We want to maintain our reputation here. And it's probably, we especially see some of the, like you mentioned earlier, there's like 100 aggregators. Some of the smaller ones who haven't necessarily raised capital will throw out a big number. It's the best way for them to differentiate themselves.
Right.
So, for any sellers who are listening to this, it's good to ask where the cash is coming from. What does the process look like? How fast can you close? Because sometimes we go up against companies that are, throwing out high multiples, and then they're scrambling to get the cash.
Right. They don't actually have the money yet. They just
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's fast money. In this case, you can get cash quickly, but it could take 6 months, and it's really unfair to a seller who, like you mentioned, like it's their baby, right? They're maybe already planning the next chapter of their life.
Yep.
And they're waiting on this cash, and maybe it takes 180 days. Maybe it never comes. It's really not fair. I mean, Amazon sellers, they're never going to take their foot off the pedal, but, eventually their business is selling. And so, for the sellers out there, make sure that whoever you're talking to, they have the cash. I would say you can really ask, almost anything you want, right? Where do you get the cash from? Who are your investors? What does the process look like? Do your diligence, just like the aggregators doing their due diligence on the seller.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Tell me your best joke from when you were doing stand-up.
I've totally shifted.
Yeah, you don't remember any of them anymore?
From that to now I'm a dad. I have a 4-year-old and I have a 2.5-year-old, so I have dad jokes.
Okay, let's hear a good dad joke.
Ellie asked me, how much does the chimney cost?
How much, Dad?
Nothing. It's on the house.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, that's Ellie awesome. Maybe has a future instead of comedy. Either that or sales. We'll see what happens. I'll let her choose.
Very cool. Yeah. So we're getting close to our time here. There's lots of questions I probably didn't ask. If there's a few things that you think that people should know, kind of ad-lib and tell people, things they should know about the aggregator space or about you guys specifically, maybe.
Yeah, I think the first thing about, for sellers who are getting close to selling their business, it's important to think about, what are your expectations? Do you have an idea of what your business is worth? Do you have an idea of what you'd want to do post-acquisition? Because when you get, to that table where you're presenting an offer, you really want to know, is this something that I can entertain? Is this what I feel like the business is worth? I know it's, sometimes, especially for first-time sellers, it could be intimidating, right? Well, big money is potentially, being thrown around. And so, really, think about it. Have your books in order. I would say that's, there's sometimes I talk to sellers, they have paper receipts. Have your financials cleaned up. Make that process as easy as possible. We can close even quicker if the, deal. And also, a lot of the, aggregators will say we can close in 30 days, but sometimes sellers want 60 days, right? They're parting way with their business. So don't be afraid you can dictate the terms of the acquisition, or it's 50-50. The second thing is, I will say for Acquco, we have playbooks for every aspect of growing Amazon. 80% of our company are on the brands team. So stuff like, SEO, SEM, content and reviews, supply chain, omni-channel approach. Our goal is really grow these brands off Amazon. I could talk about that forever, but, I think what really separates us is, version 2, acquire these brands, and, version 1, acquire the brands. Version 2 is really scale them as far as you can. And I think that's where we're going to win. It's 2, 3, 4 years down the road. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about. You said you're on the sales side, so I didn't get into the growth thing. But I'm definitely still fascinated because we've been in Amazon for a long time, but there's just still so much to learn. It's still very difficult to run this stuff at scale, and I'm fascinated in terms of like what efficiencies you get by picking up a brand and throwing it into your organization, and how you can grow it. But
Yeah, it's all about the evaluation process for us really starts at the top of the funnel.
Right.
And we only want to have conversations with companies that we can scale way past acquisition. So yeah, it's challenging. I think it's one of our competitive advantages. It's where I live every day. And we'll see. We'll watch this, this podcast in 5 years, and maybe I'll be right. Hopefully, I'll be right.
Yeah, I think so. I think you are. Yeah. One of the things that we're living in the moment. Again, I know you're not on the operations team, but one of the challenges I see to be, the thing that I see to be the biggest challenge right now, as we're recording this at the beginning of September of 2021, is just logistics. I mean, it's like I've never seen. I've been in this 7 years. The cost of shipping is, on another level. The time it takes to get from point A to point B is on another level. The inconsistency of everything. And we always had everything so efficient in terms of we knew it was going to take, 37 days for this thing to happen and 12 for that to happen or whatever. And we could plan it out so perfectly. Now it's just I don't know, talk about throwing darts at a dartboard and trying in terms of figure out what something's going to cost or how long it's going to take. Making things, it's been incredibly disruptive. I mean, are you guys facing the same challenges, or do you feel like this is a threat moving forward, or is this something that's just going to shake out over the next 6 to 12 months and it'll be a distant memory?
Well, it's what I hope for versus what I think.
What do you think?
It's been a challenge for everybody, right? Because I hear stories that they were 4,000 or 18,000, right? That impacts everybody. And I think it's challenging. It's, how can you handle it? And then how can you find margin in other areas of the business and cut efficiencies? We have a very strong supply chain team and playbook. I mean, Wiley, one of our co-founders, has deep relationships in China. He actually lived at a manufacturing plant in China for a while to learn the process. And
very cool.
Yeah, we try to leverage, our expertise as much as we can, but truthfully, we're dealing with it like everybody else. And I do hope, though, in the next, 6 to 9 months, there is some relaxed fees. But, until then, we have to kind of take it on the chin.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling on it basically is either one of two things have to happen. Either costs come back down, things kind of normalize, or some sort of this is the ignition to hyperinflation. I mean, we're already talking about inflation being a challenge anyway, but these costs have to go somewhere, and business owners can't absorb them forever. It's any one-time cost, it's always okay, we're going to write that off. We can't really increase our pricing, but if this is a long-term factor, then everyone has to at some point raise their price. I mean, no one wants to be the first one, but at some point, everyone's going to have to do it. And these costs are, I mean, depending on what you're importing, if you're importing, a container of iPhones, it's almost insignificant probably, the cost, because it's probably, I don't know what a container, $5 million or something is a container of iPhone. I'm just throwing out numbers, and it costs an extra $20,000. It's barely even throwing a grain of sand in the ocean. But we've now got containers of cheaper goods where the shipping's more than the freaking product itself. I mean, it's gotten kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's especially challenging because also Amazon is extremely price sensitive. They did not want you to increase prices.
Yeah,
and usually, from just classic economics, that usually pass it on to the customer. So we'll see what happens. It is a challenge for sure.
Cool. All right, two last questions before I let you go. I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
First of all, how do I get one of these Teslas? I got another spot in my garage I can park one of these things next to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to give you a Tesla. I'll deliver it myself. If you refer a seller that we end up acquiring, you get a Tesla or $50,000 in cash. Oh,
interesting. Well, if you guys are listening to this, please tell them that Mike Jackson sent you then, so I can throw a Tesla in my garage. I'll probably take the $50K on, so we already have a Tesla. But
hey, look, you for two sellers, you get both.
There you go. Perfect. But either way, let them know that Ecomcrew sent you. This was not an affiliate or paid podcast. I want to just throw that out there. I wasn't expecting that answer, actually. That wasn't the reason I wanted to record this. I do think that this is informative for people out there. Again, I want to try to interview a bunch of different aggregators so people you'll get comfortable with what's out there. I think most people listening, whether you started your business for this purpose or not, at some point you're going to realize the reason you started a business was to eventually exit the business. No one wants to do everything forever. Everything, no matter what, comes to an end. and at some point you're going to want to sell. I promise you. I've been through this myself a few times where like you start it, you're like, oh, I'm never going to sell this. This is going to be like my lifestyle business forever. Or, the thing I'm going to have, but eventually everything, like I said, comes to an end, and it's becoming a better and better time to sell. And if you think about, no matter how good you are at running your Amazon business, if you sell to Jake and his team, again, it opens the door up to have a life-changing amount of money that allows you to invest and do other things. It frees up your time to go start that next Amazon business, or just to go like enjoy your life. I've been trying to do some of that myself these days as well. And it's not always about grinding and running up the score. So the last question I wanted to ask is if people do want to reach out to you and they're interested, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually give you my direct line.
Uh-oh. This is dangerous.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
There's tens of thousands of people listening to this, so be careful here.
Good. I really like talking to Amazon sellers. I can't say that we're flexible, and without me being flexible as well. So my direct line is 908-208-9674, or you can email me. I know sometimes people don't necessarily want to talk on the phone. Jake.Wolpert, that's WOLPERT, at Acquco.
And you want to spell that out for people just so they have the exact spelling?
ACQU.co.
Perfect. And just run through the phone number and email address one more time so people don't have to hit reverse.
Yeah, no problem. 908-208-9674. And the email is Jake.Wolpert. Wolpert is WOLPERT, at Acquco.
Awesome. Jake, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You'd be surprised at how many people we've reached out to in this space that just like don't get back or decline our offer to have on the podcast, which blows me away. So I do appreciate you coming and doing this and giving us your time.
No, I love it. I mean, I think, look, no offense, but I think people are crazy to not come on. You guys have done 400 or 500 episodes. You got a good thing going. I really enjoyed listening to a lot of the podcasts, getting ready for this. And it's an honor to be invited.
Thank you. Well, I apologize to waste your time getting prepared. There wasn't a whole lot to be prepared for. We, I don't know, we live this stuff, right? I mean, that's the thing that I think that makes us different. And so, we've been through, I feel like everything that can happen in the world of Amazon and selling online. And it makes it a lot easier to be the podcast host in that regard. And you guys know your stuff too. I mean, you've got hundreds I actually never asked that question. How many deals have you guys closed?
We've closed $200 million. Well, we have $200 million in revenue.
So, I mean, you guys know your stuff too, which was more my point, and I could tell that just from the first few minutes of talking to you. So,
yeah, I appreciate that.
Appreciate the kind words. Thank you for coming on. And anybody out there that ends up closing a deal, I'll send you a picture of me driving down the road in my Tesla.
Yeah, both of us driving in your Tesla.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it, man.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Good. All right, guys. That is going to wrap it up for the 304th episode of the Ecomcrew podcast. I want to thank Jake again for coming on the show. Go search Acquco, ACQUCO. If you're interested in learning more about them, again, I can't thank you enough for your time. Really appreciate your candor and just being willing to talk. It's always fun having these types of conversations. These are some of my favorite episodes to do, where you just kind of turn on the mic and see where things go and ask really smart people interesting questions. So without further ado, we're going to end this episode, wrap up the 406th episode of the Ecomcrew podcast. It's crazy. We're already over 400 and heading towards 500. I never thought we'd see that day, and I'm already thinking about that. It'll be, probably towards the end of next year, or maybe the year after that before we hit it, depending on how many episodes we put out. But it's pretty cool to even think that 500 is within sight. So it's in no small part to everyone listening. Obviously, if there weren't people listening and people that didn't enjoy the show, we wouldn't keep doing this. So thank you so much. All right, talked enough this week. Until the next one, happy selling. We'll talk to you soon.